Hi, this is State Senator Tom George. Welcome to my program, Current Events. And today I have with me Mr. David Ingall.
Right.
Dave, thanks for coming on my program. And you are the Assistant Director at the Monroe County Historical Museum.
That's correct.
And before we get into our topic today, can you just tell me a little bit about your background? I know you trained at Western.
Yeah, I'm a graduate of Western. I actually studied history at Western and also business. And I spent the majority of my career in business. I was in the retail grocery business. I was a district manager, worked my way up to that point, and was faced with a career change and was fortunate enough to be able to get this position at the Monroe County Historical Museum. I'm a native of Monroe, was born in Monroe, and I've always been involved in history, historical societies, always attended the events, and I've done a lot of research at the museum and so forth. So I was fortunate enough when a position became available, I applied and was selected.
And just, so our viewers know, where is Monroe? I mean, you're not in Kalamazoo County.
No.
You're on the east side of the
That's
state.
right, directly east of Kalamazoo. Monroe is located just a little ways off of Lake Erie, off of I-75. It's not too far from the Ohio border between Detroit and Ohio. It's about 20 miles north of Toledo.
It's probably a couple-hour drive from Kalamazoo.
Yes, it would. You'd just take 94 across to 275 south to I-75 and get off at the numerous exits that say Monroe.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I have you on my program is because even though you're not in the Kalamazoo area, you have a very interesting job, you have a very interesting museum, and Monroe is the location of a very important or very tragic incident in American history. And I thought I'd have you come on and tell us a little bit about the museum and about the site in Monroe that's open to the public and about what it means and what happened there.
Well, we operate numerous sites. We have, first of all, a main museum, which is right downtown. Probably what we're most known for in that museum is General Custer. Mm-hmm. Of course, General George Armstrong Custer was from Monroe. He was not born in Michigan. He was born in Ohio, but spent half his childhood in Ohio and Monroe, but then married a Monroe woman and ended up Monroe was his home. But we also operate a trading post, which is called the Navarre-Anderson Trading Post. That is the oldest wooden structure in the state of Michigan. And we do numerous events out there, particularly in the spring and summer.
What does that date to?
1790. So, matter of fact, John Anderson, who at one time owned the building, was the colonel of the 2nd Michigan Militia during the War of 1812. But during our battle, he was in hiding in Ohio. He was not actually there. We also operate a Vietnam Veterans Museum, and there's a new labor history museum which has just opened up also. Then the other site we run is the River Raisin Battlefield Museum, which is a building that sits on the actual battlefield site.
And that's really was to be the focus of today's program, is this Battle of the River Raisin. What was that, and when did that occur?
Well, that occurred in January of 1813, and what that was Detroit surrendered. Before that, Territorial Governor Hull surrendered Detroit to the British without a fight. So the American Army wanted to retake Detroit.
So we should just set the scene a little bit. We're talking about the War of 1812.
Correct.
And the first land action in Michigan was when the British captured Mackinac Island.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
And so the war's going on. It's between the new United States and Great Britain. And as part of that, the British surround Detroit, which has American soldiers in it. Michigan's not a state. We're a territory at this point.
That's right.
And we have a small American militia there. I know many of them were from Ohio, which was a state.
That's right.
And they surrender.
Right.
General Hull surrenders to the British in Detroit. So the British then occupy Detroit, and now we're in 1812, 1813.
That'd be 1812. So thus, the British controlled Michigan Territory. So what happens is there is a three-pronged expedition through Ohio. There's an eastern Army column, there's a central Army column, and a western Army column, all coming through Ohio from the south. The column that ends up at the River Raisin is the far western column on the left, and they are all recruited mainly from the state of Kentucky. They're mainly Kentucky militia, and they leave Kentucky in August of 1812, and matter of fact, the famous orator and United States Senator and Congressman Henry Clay gives them a rousing speech to send them off from Georgetown, Kentucky. And what they do is they follow a trail up through Ohio to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then they follow Anthony Wayne's trail along the Maumee River that he took during the Ohio Indian Wars. What happens is they end up camping at the rapids of the Maumee, which is near current-day Toledo. Now, Harrison tells Winchester...
And Harrison is the...
Yeah, he's the overall commander of all these three columns. Brigadier General James Winchester is the commander of the left column that will end up at Frenchtown. Now what happens is Harrison tells him to stay at the rapids, not to go any farther and wait for him to come up with the other columns. In the meantime, Frenchtown is surrendered as part of Detroit's surrender.
In Frenchtown, is this where present-day Monroe is?
It's part of present-day Monroe today, but the actual town of Monroe is a little bit farther up the river from where the settlement was. But in essence, it is. So what happens is the locals who are being controlled by the British, there's about 200 British, there's basically Canadian militia and local Native Americans are holding the town. They find out about this American column, and they send some messengers down to Winchester and beg him to free them. So what happens is Winchester makes a decision to go to Frenchtown. He sends 650 men there.
In response to this plea
That's
from
right.
the locals.
That's right. So what happens is the Americans take the town on January 18th. They have 650 men. The British only have about 200 holding the settlement, I should say. So they pretty easily push the British out, and they have control of Frenchtown. In the meantime, Winchester comes to Frenchtown with the rest of his force. So he has a total force now of 934 men. That's the American force. They're made up of mostly Kentucky militia, some regular United States troops, particularly the 17th United States Infantry. What happens is they know the British probably will be coming back, but they came back much faster than they anticipated. So what happens is on the 22nd of January, right around dawn, it was still dark.
Just a few days later.
That's right. The British attack. And what makes this battle so important in our history is that it was the worst American defeat in the whole War of 1812. Out of the 934 men, only 33 escaped death or capture. So it was a complete rout. So what happened on the 22nd was, at dawn, on the right flank was the 17th Infantry. They were encamped in an open area. They had no breastworks. They didn't build anything to get behind to protect them. There was a fence line. Frenchtown, the Frenchtown settlement, as it was known, was a fence line. There were about 6 houses and farms within this fence line, and they were French-Canadian strip farms, which